Alexander Downer was Australia's longest-serving foreign minister, and yes, I worked for him for quite a few years. He joins us now live from London. Good to talk to you again, Alexander. You must have been so pleased to hear about this arrangement. Why couldn't it have been done 10, 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I think one of the big changes is actually the change in the orientation of British foreign and security policy. When the UK was part of the European Union, its foreign and security policy was really built entirely around Europe. And the UK has become more than a regional country. It's now become a country with global interests. It has a foreign policy which is described as a tilt to the Indo-Pacific. So they're becoming much more active in the Indo-Pacific. They're much more interested in dealing with Australia. And here is a need that Australia had with the submarine project not going so well. And the British are one of those countries, and obviously above all the Americans, who are able to help. And you have to get agreement from countries which have this nuclear propulsion technology to help with the development of it for Australia. You have to get their help. Because I think I'm right in saying only 6 countries in the world have nuclear-powered submarines. So, where else do you go? So it's a combination of all of those things that's led to this.
It was fascinating because we've talked about, of course, the dynamics in East Asia, the rise of China, the belligerence, and, of course, the importance of the Australia-US alliance. But from what you're saying, Brexit has, in fact, helped nudge this along.
That's absolutely for sure. I don't know whether Remainers in the UK would want to admit that, but there's no doubt about it. That has had a significant impact. I've often said I was the foreign minister for very nearly 12 years. And in that time, not once did a British foreign minister visit Australia, not once. Whereas now the UK has completed, or just about to complete, negotiations for a free trade agreement with Australia. They've now entered into this partnership with Australia and the United States. So you are seeing a real reorientation, if you like, of British foreign policy, which, to be frank, is to our advantage because the UK is one of those countries in the world, along with the US, that ultimately has common interests with us, common values with us, and we can trust.
Tell us about the reception to this news in London today. Has it been a significant development and has it been welcomed?
Yes, I haven't heard any criticism of it at all so far. There's been a very positive media reporting of it. It's come, though, on the same day as a reshuffle of the cabinet. So the media is first and foremost focusing on, inter alia, by the way, who the new foreign minister is going to be, a woman called Liz Truss, who's well known to many of us Australians because she's been the minister responsible for negotiating the free trade agreement with Australia. So it's good for us that she's got that job. I was with her for a couple of hours earlier this week, so I'm delighted that she's become what they call here the foreign secretary, the foreign minister. But look, having said all of that, it has got a lot of publicity. There's been a great deal of interest in it. And it's all very positive. I mean, there are some who think that the UK should just focus on Europe, but generally speaking, it's been pretty warmly welcomed. And Australia's a popular country over here.
Tell me about your thoughts on what at the moment is really an interesting little sidelight, but it could become more fascinating in the future. And that is New Zealand. Of course, they effectively checked out of ANZUS when they banned US nuclear vessels. Now Jacinda Ardern is saying any Australian nuclear subs wouldn't be welcome in New Zealand waters. How long can New Zealand sort of stay out of the fray when it comes to these defence and security interests in its own region?
Well, I mean, this is the most left-wing government that New Zealand's had in my lifetime. It's a very left-wing government, and that's what New Zealand officials will say to you privately. Behind closed doors. You have to accept that, and the New Zealand government will in time change, and it will get back into more of the mainstream that you had when John Key was the Prime Minister. But this is a government. It's like putting the Greens in Australia into the government and asking them to determine your foreign policy. The Foreign Minister of New Zealand recently said that she didn't want to be involved with Five Eyes arrangements in relation to China. The Trade Minister has said he didn't want to get too close to Australia because it might interrupt New Zealand's trade with China. I mean, this is not a country any longer under the present New Zealand government, which is Australia's best mate, which when I was the Foreign Minister, and there were Labor governments as well as National Party governments in New Zealand during that time, New Zealand was very much our best mate. But, under Jacinda Ardern, it's like having a Green left government, really, and they're not on the same page as most Australians.
Thanks for joining us, Alexander.
It's a pleasure.